Have you ever really stopped to think about how a child's mind works? We're diving into the incredible work of Jean Piaget, a psychologist who totally reshaped how we see development, all by asking one simple question: how do we learn to think?
Okay, so let's get one thing straight right away. For the longest time, the common wisdom was that kids were basically just miniature adults. Their brains were like ours, just emptier. But Piaget showed up and said, no, that's not it at all. He realized a child's mind isn't just a simpler version of ours, it's running on a completely different operating system. It thinks in a fundamentally different way.
So, here's the roadmap for our journey today. We're going to start with that big idea that kids are not miniature adults. Then we'll walk through Piaget's 4 key stages, from learning with your hands and mouth, to playing with symbols, to finally getting a grip on logic, and then thinking about thinking itself. And we'll wrap up by seeing how we actually carry these stages with us our whole lives. And really, this was the breakthrough. Piaget proposed that development isn't just a slow, steady accumulation of facts. It happens in distinct stages. And moving from one stage to the next isn't just an upgrade, it's a complete reboot of how the mind processes the world. Our journey starts right at the beginning, from birth to about 2 years old. This is what Piaget called the sensorimotor stage, and it's all about learning through the physical world in the most direct way possible.
So during this time, for a baby, thinking is doing. There's no separation. The world only makes sense through what they can see, touch, taste, and physically move. There's no sitting around pondering things. Knowledge comes directly from their senses and actions. And this is how they learn. It's fascinating. At first, a baby might just randomly suck their thumb and realize, hey, that feels good, so they repeat it. Then they discover they can make things happen, like dropping a toy makes a cool sound. And pretty soon, they become little scientists, right? They start experimenting. What happens if I drop it harder or from higher up? This is learning at its most fundamental level.
This brings us to a really mind-bending question that defines the huge cognitive leap they make in this stage. For a tiny baby, if you take their favorite teddy bear and hide it under a blanket, does it still exist? And the answer is, for them, no. The toy has literally vanished from the universe. It's a case of out of sight, out of existence. So the single biggest achievement of this entire stage is developing what's called object permanence, that deep gut-level understanding that things are still there even when you can't see them. This is the birth of memory and thought. Okay, so once a child knows the physical world is permanent, their mind takes another giant leap. They enter a brand new world, the world of symbols. This is the pre-operational stage, and it happens from about age 2 to 7. The game changer here is that thought is no longer tied to just physical action. A child can now use a word, or a drawing, or just a picture in their head to represent a real thing. And this one ability, well, it unlocks the entire universe of imagination. Now, this stage is a really fascinating mix. You get these incredible new powers, like rich symbolic play. But you also get some serious limitations. There's egocentrism, which is basically the inability to understand that someone else has a different point of view than you. And as we're about to see, their thinking is still, well, pretty illogical. And this just says it all. This simple wooden block isn't a block anymore. In the mind of a 4-year-old, it is a phone, or a car, or a slice of pizza. The symbol becomes the reality in their world of play. And that is an amazing cognitive power. Here's the perfect experiment to show you what we mean by non-logical. Picture this. You show a kid 2 identical glasses with the exact same amount of water. They agree, yep, they're the same. Then, right in front of them, you pour the water from one glass into a taller, skinnier one. You ask, which one has more now? And almost every single time, they'll point to the tall glass. Why? Because the water looks higher. They are completely fooled by what they see, not by logic. So, what happens next? How do they solve that water glass puzzle? Well, around age 7 to 11, they enter the concrete operational stage. And this is when logic finally walks onto the scene. Now, a child in this stage can totally solve the water problem. They can think logically, but, and this is the important part, that logic is tied to concrete, real-world things they can see and touch. Their thinking is organized and rational, but it's not abstract, not yet. So, they finally get the concept of conservation. They can sort things into categories. And, most importantly, they understand reversibility, this cool idea that you can mentally rewind an action.
This is a perfect, simple example. They don't just memorize that 5 plus 3 is 8. They understand the relationship. They get that you can go backwards, that 8 minus 3 has to be 5. They can mentally pour the water back into the first glass and see that it's the same. And that brings us to the final stage in Piaget's theory, which kicks in around age 11 and up. This is the formal operational stage, and this is where thinking finally breaks free from the physical world entirely. At this stage, you can now think about things that aren't real or present. You can reason about hypothetical scenarios, you can plan for the future, you can weigh all the different possibilities in your mind. Thinking becomes incredibly powerful and flexible. This is the world of what if. It's what lets you think like a scientist, come up with a theory, and then figure out how to systematically test it. And it's what finally allows us to truly wrestle with those huge, complicated, abstract ideas like justice, morality, and freedom. So let's do a super quick recap of the journey, right? We start by understanding the world by doing. Then we understand it through symbols. After that, we apply logic to real things. And finally, we can think logically about ideas themselves. You can see how each stage literally builds on the last one. But here's something really important that a lot of people miss. It's not like you hit the final stage and just delete all the ones that came before it. Nope, that's not how our brains work at all. Exactly. Think of it like a mental toolkit. These stages add up. As an adult, you might use your abstract, formal operational brain to plan a budget. But when you're trying to build some IKEA furniture, you are 100% using your concrete operational skills. All the earlier stages get integrated, giving you a much more flexible way of thinking. And this brings us right to our final thought. Piaget's theory isn't just some old academic idea. It has huge, real-world implications. If we truly understand that a 7-year-old thinks in concrete terms and a 4-year-old lives in a world of symbols, how should that change the way we teach them? What is one thing we could do differently right now, knowing what we know? It's a pretty powerful question to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.